Welcome back to Turn the Antenna, everyone. Today, we are going to be breaking down Interview with the Vampires Season 2's final episode. The scene opens with the camera panning along a row of tombs. Flickering light calls our focus for a brief moment to the tomb of Lestat's first love, Nikki. Louis' groans and cries echo the darkness as he descends into madness, while locked away in his coffin cell in the basement of the Théâtre des Vampires. Present-day Louis recalls the helplessness, the despair, and the loss of his will to live after the death of Claudia and his fledgling Madeleine. Armand rescues Louis, who's now physically weak and psychologically demented. He kills indiscriminately for sustenance while plotting his revenge against all involved with the death of his beloved Claudia. Armand mind speaks to Louis, warns him to leave Paris, and tries to apologize for his role in the show trial. He tells Louis that it was he that saved him at the show trial, and he who pulled him out of the wall. For all those helpful deeds, Louis forewarns Armand and tells him not to be present at the theater the following night. In present day, Daniel questions Armand and says, "They were your coven for hundreds of years. You had no feelings for any of them?" To which Armand replies, "I had complicated feelings."
13-1. Maybe you were hedging your bets? See who emerges from the ash heap?
Here's the thing. I always speak of the coven's disloyalty. In my breakdown of this season's episode 3, I think it was, I spoke of how easily those members abandoned Armand for Lestat's leadership. I also expressed my disappointment in Sam going along with Santiago's hijacking of the coven's leadership. But the question that I should have posed to myself is that of Armand's worthiness to be leader. The evidence presented in this past season of his actions speak against his claim. Louis details his massacre of the coven, the burning down of the Théâtre des Vampires, and the annihilation of Santiago. I must say, however, that I was mildly disappointed in Louis and Santiago's final encounter. I felt robbed of a fight of the bosses scene where the protagonist and antagonist duke it out in a show of skill during combat. It's the same way that I felt with Arya and the Night King during the final season of Game of Thrones. There was no kung fu kicks, no boxing swings, bloodied mouths, or broken bones. You know, it's like a dance that they normally do at the end of every movie where the protagonist and the antagonist have like that back and forth blow for blow. And then right at the very end, the protagonist is crawling on the floor. He's deeply wounded. And right at the last minute before the antagonist throws that death blow, the protagonist turns it around and the crowd goes wild. Yes, it's a bit formulaic, but nonetheless, Louis' single machete swing that ended the vampire Santiago was indeed satisfying. After eliminating the coven, Louis sits with Armand in his apartment and questions him about everything. Armand feeds Louis his usual soup of lies while acting out his rendition of the helpless victim. Armand and Louis locate Lestat, who is found in his Maker Magnus's lair in deep thought and doubt about his cruel actions towards his daughter and former companion. Louis, upon learning that he cannot physically harm Lestat, does worse by declaring Armand as his companion while sealing his announcement with a kiss. We all can only imagine the emotional and mental blow that must have been to Lestat. In present day, the interview comes to a halt as the epic story of the vampire Louis comes to an end. At the stopping of Daniel's recorder, Armand admits that he knew the depths of Lestat's love for Louis. Daniel ruffles through the documents that Rashid had secretly slipped him moments earlier. He then asks a few follow-up questions.
There was more than one person in the theater that night who could have saved you.
That rock our world. Daniel proceeds to read out loud parts of Rashid's document, which turns out to be a copy of the Vampire Sam's script of the show trial, with edit notes provided by none other than you guys' best friend, Armand. Yes, Armand. Judas Iscariot strikes again. Daniel passes the documents to Louis under the gaze of a silently panicked Armand. We, the viewers, are brought back to the Théâtre des Vampires, but this time it's during a final rehearsal of the show trial in which Santiago, Lestat, and the others are being directed by you guys' god brother, the vampire Armand. Remember, Louis specifically asked Armand whether or not he had rehearsed the show trial with Lestat. Armand replied,
They rehearsed it with him. I stayed in my coffin when I was there.
Louis continues to read through the script and Armand's notes in disbelief and hurt. We are then shown the actual trial and learn that it was Lestat who in fact took mental control of the audience to spare Louis of death, not Armand. Ladies and gentlemen, them and theys, you all's big brother, the vampire, Armand. Do you guys remember episode 6 when Armand was recalling the abduction of Madeline, Claudia, and Louis at the cafe, the one that he helped set up? Do you remember in present day the look on his face? Because I remember it. He seemed to be in such pain and such agony. I tell you, this man, not the actor, not Assad, right? Armand, the way that he plays the perpetual victim, he deserves an Emmy. Just look at him. Look how he's doing his face. He's in so much pain. And Louis right there, just buying it, soaking it up, just soaking it up. Jacob Anderson said at the end of episode 6 that Louis has felt for a long time that something was wrong, that there was a lie being told, and that the penthouse in Dubai was a bit of a prison. So he had an inkling that complete truths were not being told by Armand, but he couldn't put his finger on exactly what it was. Armand removed Louis from his coffin cell in the basement of the theatre, only to then have him confined to the prison that is their 77-year companionship, built on lies and control. Let's take a moment to acknowledge Daniel's balls of steel. In the face of potential death, seated among two killing machines, he spoke truth without fear. And that, my friends, is what makes Daniel special. That, my friends, is what makes Daniel Malloy so interesting. Daniel reveals his sources as the panic Armand tries desperately to contest the validity of the script and its notes. Apparently, Sam was an undercover agent for the Talamasca during the events in Paris. No wonder why he stayed out of the coven's personal drama and just went with the flow. The pieces are starting to click here, people. After all is revealed, Louis storms out and Armand quickly follows behind, desperately trying his best to weave more webs of untruths and deceit. Daniel is warned by the Talamasca to leave the penthouse via messenger, but instead he heads towards the disturbance in the library. Armand, having been slammed into a wall, lies on the ground as Louis stands above him and warns him of the consequences that will ensue if he harms Daniel in any way.
Thank you.
Right away, Louis heads back to New Orleans in search of his maker, his paramour, Lestat. We see Lestat has confined himself to a dilapidated house, playing on a wooden keyboard, a shell of his once glorious self. I was looking closely at the board that Lestat was playing on, and it looks like a plank that sits under the piano keys. When you have like an organ or a piano or a keyboard, there is a plank that's right underneath the keys. And it seems as though the indentations that are on the wood that he's holding, there were keys that once sat on those. So I don't know if maybe he had a piano in 1953 or something like that, and he's been pressing away at those keys until they fell off. And so now he's down to the plank, and that's what he's playing on. I was like, why does he have a wooden keyboard? Just assuming because it was kind of like bugging me. So that's my theory on that one. He is in such despair that he's just in a trance in a sense.
Hello, Lestat. Hello, Louis.
Louis informs him that he is in New Orleans to see him and that he no longer has a companion. He also questions him about the show trial and if he indeed did save him. Lestat confirms his beliefs and in Lestat fashion brushes off his act in attempt to mask his deep and always consuming feelings for Louis to avoid hurt and Louis' expected rejection. But surprisingly, Louis lets down his guard and exposes his heart to Lestat. He thanks him for the dark gift, apologizes for the years of suffering that he inflicted on Lestat. Lestat then too gives way to his vulnerability and bares his soul. He speaks of two events that have seemed to haunt him for the past 80 years. Louis' attempted self-ending.
Did you hurt yourself?
And the death of Claudia.
She looked at me at the end.
This scene of Louis hugging Lestat, besides the fact that it was so welcomed, I was waiting for that for such a long time. I was waiting for them to reunite, and it was such a beautiful moment. But you can see on Lestat's face when Louis hugs him, the relief that the love of my life has finally come back to me. He's finally in my arms, and he has forgiven me for my part in our daughter's death. He has forgiven me for Antoinette. He's forgiven me for the nights and the days when I lashed out at him during the time that we were a family. I feel as though all of that was seen on Lestat's face when Louis hugged him. Lestat has had decades to think about all that he has done. And I feel in my heart that when he and Claudia and Louis became a family, when they first started out, that was probably the only real happy family dynamic that Lestat has known. And so, of course, he values it. And I think that's one of the reasons why he went back to New Orleans, of all places, because that's where he met Louis. That's the place that birthed Louis. That's the place that birthed Claudia. But them not being there made it even worse. And so we see the state of regress that he went into. And it's just sad to see. But he was still glowing though, right? So I'm really happy that they got back together, that there was this reunion, and it was just so heartfelt. Oh my goodness, especially when Lestat asks, did you hurt yourself? Ooh, all the feels. That was so emotional, man. Just great job, Sam Reed. Jacob Anderson, great job. Assad, good job. I can't forget Assad. The acting in this is just beautiful. We break to a more lighthearted scene, that of Daniel promoting his book on a TV show, and then it's revealed that Daniel was turned by the now missing Armand. Vampiric voices are heard from all over the world with threats of harming Louis. We see that it looks like a few months have passed since visiting Lestat, and Louis is back at the penthouse, but it is visibly different in its design. Yellows, blues, and flowers pepper the apartment, giving it a lighter air. Because they didn't show Lestat, I watched this scene at least 6 times, trying to find like parts of Lestat's personality in the apartment. When I look at the painting that Louis is looking at, what I see is Lestat and Louis are laying down. Louis is on top hugging Lestat, hugging him close, and Claudia is off to the side. That's what I see. The episode and season ends with Louis in the library/meditation room. Louis warns his foes and tells them to pull up.
I own the night.
What a show! Interview with the Vampire. What a show! Y'all, let's do some shout outs. A shout out to Anne Rice. May you have eternal rest. The showrunners, the directors, the actors, the costume department, music department, writers. Bravo, brava. Now, on to my questions and my thoughts. So the question that I have is, where is Lestat? We know that he's going on tour, and that's going to be the plot for next season. But I want to know, did he and Louis make up? Like, really make up? Is he there in Dubai sometimes? Like, what's going on there? I also want to know, did Lestat make Louis drink from him to attain the power of Akasha so that Louis too cannot be destroyed by fire? Everybody's out for Louis. So did Lestat in a way put some sort of protection on him? Because we all know he's not going to just leave Louis stranded. My last question is, where did Armand slither to? So those are the only questions that I have at the end of this season. I can't wait till season 3. Lestat's story is going to be the focus of season 3. I have decided not to research, read, or watch anything having to do with Lestat's side of things because I want to be shocked and awed and all of those things for the first time when the season comes out. And that, my friend, is it. There is nothing more. The season is done. If you guys are interested in seeing all of my breakdowns of this season, just click on the playlist. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will speak to you all in a few days.